Hello, it's Lindy. I thought after a couple years living in France, I would do a video on some of the differences that I've noticed between États-Unis, the United States, and La France, France. So there are definitely some common, if you just do a Google search on some of the differences, the big ones you'll notice is about things being closed on Sundays, and oftentimes on Mondays too. Any day of the week from 12 to 2, they take their lunch. So even if you're on your lunch break, stores are also on their lunch break, so you can't really run errands during that time. So those are like common things. Also like smoking, another big stereotype. Yes, it's true, the French often smoke, definitely more compared to the US. But I thought I would do some of the things I've noticed that aren't always talked about. Alright, so first thing is saying bonjour, saying hello. So whether you're walking to a store or anywhere really, or even just crossing somebody on the street, you might say bonjour. Or when you're trying to ask for directions or whatever it might be, if you don't say bonjour, like say hello first, people find that very rude. I think it's really a cool way to like show respect and just like you're acknowledging that somebody is, you see them, so you're saying hello. Also with greetings is faire la bise. So giving those two like cheek kisses is just a way of saying hello. It's very common, and if you don't, like, it is considered kind of rude. I know a lot of times Americans come to France and they think that's very intimate, but it's just like a normal occurrence. Like, I mean, think about if you're giving somebody a hug, you're like taking their whole body versus just like on the cheek. So the big question, when do you faire la bise? So it's really anytime you're meeting somebody, your friends, or if you're in like a group of friends, you will stop and give every single person like the two cheek kisses. Not necessarily in a professional setting, unless like with colleagues that you know well, and it also depends on your work. Some work settings are very formal. However, there are some that are more casual and more family style, and they often do the bise when greeting their colleagues. Also, I will note, it depends on the region, how many you do. You would think already it's complicated knowing when to do the bise, but it also depends on the region. Overall, it's 2 kisses, but in some regions they'll do 3, some will do 4. It just kind of depends, and once you get there, you'll kind of start catching on and noticing. Okay, so oftentimes the French get the stereotype of being kind of cold or standoffish. I think that's definitely not true. You just have to get to know them and how the French are. They don't exaggerate their emotions, and I just find them to not be fake. I just think a lot of times Americans don't want to offend, so they almost have this like fake front, trying to avoid offending somebody or avoiding an uncomfortable, awkward encounter. So they are very friendly and smile and very like exaggerated, whereas the French are just, I just find them to be more real, and like they're just more direct, and not that they don't want to offend, but they're just honest with how they feel and are just more direct and open with it. And with that, they're not overly smiley, and that's why often they get the stereotype of being kind of cold, because they're not just like have a smile plaster on their face all the time. Like I said, they're very genuine, and they're also very kind people, and once you get to know them, they become lifelong friends. Alright, this one's one of my favorites. It's the slow-paced lifestyle. Like I mentioned, things are closed on Sundays and oftentimes Mondays. That can get kind of annoying, but you get used to it, and it's again kind of going with this more enjoying life. Paperwork is another way of showing you that they have a slow-paced lifestyle. Paperwork and trying to set up your bank account, setting up anything really. It's gonna be a process, so don't expect it to just like you go in and get it done right there. Also with the work-life balance. So in France, it's a requirement. Everybody has 5 weeks paid vacation, which is awesome. I just think it shows too that they not only do they work hard, but then they also understand like balancing that with enjoying and profiter, like enjoying and like living life to the fullest. So there really is that work-life balance, which is great in France. Another example showing the slow-paced life is with their meals. So it's no secret that French food cuisine is incredible, and that's another stereotype that is so true. They usually take about 2 hours from start to finish. Even if you think you're just gonna have a casual meal, you'll have the apéro, which is like the starter drink, or like drinks to begin with, like little things to grignoter, little things to just nibble on. Then you have your starter and your main dish, and then often a dessert and cheese, and then coffee to finish it off. So it's kind of a long process. But the socializing and just chatting with, catching up with friends, family, that's really what's emphasized during the meal. So that's why it takes so long. It's not that you're just like eating and eating, though you are, but it's really more focus is put on enjoying the company. Now this one just, I think, is so fun. So the French are kind of known for complaining, and I think it's hilarious. So like, I think it's funny because it's like a lighthearted complaining. I don't think it's like a serious, like, oh, like I hate life and blah, blah, blah. It's very much like they value and enjoy their life, but then they just complain. I don't know, I can't really determine if it's like a positive or negative thing. I think it's funny and something I've noticed, so. Something that's probably not a secret is how much art is important in the French culture. Art is truly everywhere. You can be walking in even like a small town, not even in a big city. You're walking down the street and you see signs that are very artistic, or even like a lamppost would have like this detail on it, and you're just like, wow, like everything has such an importance and artistic element to it. So not only with art, but history is very important in France. I feel like a lot of times my conversations here are more intellectual and more, they just reference like history, culture, current events, and art in just normal everyday conversations. Not that conversations with Americans aren't interesting and fun, but I just feel like I'm always kind of surprised just talking like to a random acquaintance or like whomever, and I just noticed that we usually have more interesting and intellectual conversations. So I enjoy that aspect of French people and culture. So kind of going on with like having a slower pace and the work-life balance and all that, I noticed that values in France are different. For example, like if you look at just a normal day off, a lot of times like in France you could go to a cafe, I know, the stereotype, but like go to a cafe and like just read a book, kind of flâner, like just walk around and explore. And a lot of times Americans see that as like unproductive, like what did you do with your day, you know? But in France it's seen as like you're just enjoying life, and it is productive because you've learned from this book you might have been reading or catching up with friends, all that kind of stuff. Whereas I feel like in the US it's much more, you need to have done some sort of work, even on your day off, just to feel productive and like you're not lazy. Again, I'm not trying to generalize, that's just something that I've noticed as far as Americans versus French. There are definitely those exceptions. This is probably one of the coolest things I've noticed is the age gap or age difference between friends and different friend groups. I first noticed this like several years ago when I had studied for a bit in high school and I was in a host family, and even just like family friend gatherings at the dinner table, it was mixed between kids and adults all at the same table, and I thought that was kind of different and peculiar. Like they didn't just have like a kids table and adults separately, but it was really everybody chatted. And then more recently I noticed that friends I have, they have friends who are like, if they're my age, they might have friends in their 40s or 50s even, and it's not like this weird like, oh, you have a friend who's drastically older. It's a very normal part of culture. And I think it's cool because when you look at, definitely can relate to people of your own age trying to go through the same struggles, but when you have somebody who's much older, who has been in that situation, they can offer advice. And I think there's something of no matter what age, you can always learn something and grow, and I just think that's such a cool and like an enriching part of the culture is having friends from different age groups and it not be like something strange or so odd. So I think that's really cool. Alright, I think that's all I'm gonna share for today. I have a couple more I can think of off the top of my head, but I think those are like the main differences I've noticed, kind of like bigger themes between the United States and France. If you're from the US or a different country besides France and you have been living here for a bit, like what kind of differences have you noticed? Have you noticed the ones I mentioned? Or do you have other ones that you think would be cool to add? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to check out some other videos I've done, feel free to look at my channel. I also have a website that has more like travel guides in detail with pictures, so feel free to look there. I might do some other videos in the future, maybe like a dating in France video. If you're interested in that, just let me know. Thanks for watching. Bisous. Salut.